So welcome, and I'm gonna see a lot of people slowly trickling in. I think this is gonna be, I know this is gonna be a really fun session. I'm really excited. And as you're trickling in, a lot of you know the drill already. We're gonna ask you to, well, we're gonna have a quick check-in actually today in chat, and then we're gonna do a bit of a game. So the check-in today is very short. If you've been in other sessions, we have a lot more questions. We use a lot more, spend a lot more time interacting in chat. The check-in today is very short. Your name, your location, your organization and network. Sorry, Adrian, you should have, it was for you to post, but I posted it in there. I guess you can keep posting. So I'll just keep repeating this. For the next minute or two, we're going to do a very rapid check-in in chat, just to get to know who is here and just share who you are, where you're coming from at the moment, and what organization and networks you are a part of. Thanks, Leah, for starting us off. Let me choose another song. I always choose this song because it's the first on our festival playlist. So let's see about this one. There we go. Yeah, that's also a good one. So welcome those who are just signing in. A quick check-in in chat. I just hope, yeah, I hope you can hear me over the music. A quick check-in chat, your name, your organization and network, and where you're calling from at the moment. We're just gonna do this for another 60 seconds or so because then we're gonna actually play a game together. Um, so for those who just signed on, we're doing a rapid check-in in chat today. Your name, where you're coming from, and the network and or organizations you want to say that you're a part of. And once you've typed, just go ahead and scroll through, see who else is there, who else is if you know anybody, give them like a hi. I'm gonna wave to Rachel. Who else can I wave to? Wave to Laura, who we've interacted in chat. So give them a hi if you once you've typed, if you know somebody in the chat. For those who are just signing on, just a very, really rapid check-in and chat. Or you can do it like that, Sandra, a really big hi. Name, network, location, and just give some highs to people to say it, like Liz and Sandra did, some actual highs, or just go and do an emoji reaction. And while the last of you who are just signed on are doing that, we're going to do a game. So, can everybody hear me okay? The music's not too loud. Can I get a thumbs up or okay? So I wanted to invite you to click on this link. This is the first time I'm using this app, so I'm hoping it works well, but I'm making up games as we go. And we're going to do a bit of a crossword puzzle and see how many answers you can get right. So the bottom of this crossword puzzle is a bunch of, let's see if I can, feel free to continue introducing yourself in chat if you want, but at the bottom there's a bunch of clues. And I already did the first one, group of individuals of the same species living in a specific area. That's population. So you can actually like type in here, and I think if this works well, if somebody types something in, it should come through. I don't know if it's going to work well or not. Otherwise, we'll type answers in chat. Interconnected group of people or organizations. I don't even remember what some of these words are. What could that be? And just a quick clue, all of these are words that relate to field catalysts in some way and words that came through in our prep meeting. So those are your clues right here. Introduction of new methods or ideas, number 3. So we're taking a minute for those who are just signing in to do a bit of let's see, maybe Adrian can, thank you, Adrian, for just sharing again, a bit of a crossword puzzle. Oh, somebody got one. Good job. Okay. Oh, I'm so happy this app is working. Sustainability. Okay, so we have 2 words so far. Resilience. Okay, so we have some words coming through. All of these are words. You can scroll down and look at the clues at the bottom. I'm really glad that there are people who are good at word puzzles. I'm terrible at these. And we're gonna do this for just double check how many minutes we have here. We have just a few more minutes, not much. So just a few more minutes. Let's see what collaborate. Okay, great. Try and guess some words. Um, if you guess words, you get a point, by the way. I don't know how we're gonna keep track of your points, but you can just feel good about getting your own points. Guess some words in the puzzle. All of these are words that relate to field catalysts in some way. Um, networks, good one. Let's see, what was the clue for networks? I should have guessed that one. Geez, interconnected group. Oh, see, I didn't even. Intermediary, nice. Ooh, I wanna know who are the ones that are getting these. Really good word puzzlers here. Let's see how many more we can get. I'm gonna give us maybe like 2 more minutes. I don't know. So go on. If anybody's having trouble, feel free to um just like guess random words in chat, just words you think that might be related to funders. Oh, nice. To field catalysts and um, then you can give clues to other people. We have a lot more words on here. I didn't think I had this. We had this many words, but relationship or link between people or things, ability to recover from difficulties. What else? What other words relate to field catalysts that are in this word puzzle? I'm just gonna give you 16 more seconds. You don't have to listen to me. Try and play. Ooh, there were some that I didn't see hidden. Sense make, pattern, ecosystem. Nice. Okay. Um, Feel free to keep playing and innovation. Nice. Okay. Oh, this is a lot of fun. I'm glad I did this. Um, we wanted to start off with a quick activity around. You just scroll, not scroll down, what's the word? Minimize, no, what's the word? Fade the music. Everybody can say hi to Levante, they can see you. Oh. Um, so welcome everyone. And we wanted to start with actually a little bit of a game around words because one of the things that came through strongly in our co-creation meetings and talking about the word field catalyst is how many different words and concepts they represented. And what we're going to do now is we're going to actually dive right into a live scenario. Just in case anybody here hasn't been to a network festival event, welcome. Normally I would do a network festival introduction, but I'm not going to do that right now because I want to dive right into the scenario. And so you'll get a feel of what a network festival event is like just by experiencing it and have a lot of fun, hopefully. Our scenario here is we're going to put all of our speakers on spot, see if we can spotlight them. Maybe Adrian, you can help with that. And they're going to do a bit of a role play. So they're going to really put themselves on the spot and be a little bit vulnerable with us. We felt that this was a good way to start out this conversation today because, again, this is a concept that we can get lost a lot in the words.
We lost your sound. Can't hear. Brandon, we can't hear you.
Can you
This
hear
is
me now?
already part of the, yeah, this was already part of the role play, so don't worry.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's, I have the whole family around. So if anybody also doesn't know our rules and our ground rules, our principles in Cheeto spaces, is we embrace you wherever you are. We'd love to have your videos on, even if you have a bad hair day. I really need a haircut. Even if you have a really messy background, and even if you have all of the family somehow aggregating in the one room of the house, that I don't know why they're all here, but so excuse any background noise anyway and any disruptions. The What I was saying is we're going to do a bit of a role play where we're going to dive into a scenario in which we're actually seeing field catalysts and the people that interact with field catalysts in practice. And what I'm going to invite all of you to do, so first of all, be very grateful to the panelists who are putting themselves on the spot and being vulnerable. But what I'm going to invite all of you to do as you're listening is to listen with a very careful lens. What are the key attributes of field catalyst that you're noticing as you watch the role play? Because we're going to actually take these key attributes and make a bit of a mapping exercise after this. So again, and you'll see this in the chat in a moment, as you listen to the role play, notice key attributes that you are seeing that field catalysts hold. And I'm going to invite, let's see, here we have Leah is our experienced field catalyst, and Sandra is our new field catalyst. And then Liz is going to jump in as also an experienced field catalyst, who's going to also be pitching to Sally, the funder. And Samira is going to be the skeptic, somebody who just doesn't really get this, is confused about this. But I'm going to invite Leah and Sandra for you to kick us off, start talking to each other. And Sandra, I know you have a lot of questions about being a new field catalyst, but fortunately, Leah has a lot of answers. So,
Okay, Leah, what were you saying? Field what? Field transformation, field catalyst. So what are the ingredients? Let me take something to write it down. Okay, I'm ready. Hi, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear that you're thinking about taking on the field catalyst role. And I know there's kind of a lot of discussion about it right now, but tell me more about your field and what makes you interested in evolving into this role.
Well, actually, it just sounds very cool, you know? So I am just something that I think I would like to do. And so the last past years was about like social entrepreneurship, and I've been trying that, and now I'm trying more this thing that I've been seeing at all the conferences. Uh, so I would like to understand a little bit more, like what do you put in your CV?
That's a great question, and I don't have a great answer yet, but maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about why I like my origin story as a field catalyst and our organization. We, as you know, we work deeply in education here in the United States, and over many decades, I was working in a programmatic role, providing direct service support to district leaders and state leaders, and just felt like, gosh, all of this effort, all this philanthropic capital, public funding, we're not seeing outcomes change. The phrase, the needle moving, we're not seeing the needle moving. Actually, the needle's moving the wrong way in many places. And there's just collective frustration that how come all of the work we're putting in is not adding up to the change that we aspire to for our young people. And I started in community with other education service providers and organizations. And we were just realizing that, gosh, we're each doing these individual pieces of the puzzle, but it's not adding up to something that'll actually impact the system as a whole. And this is a systemic problem. So even as I say that, I'm curious for you, like when you think of the systemic problem or this notion of like actually connecting between different groups and interventions and programs and actors, even connecting like research and practice, is that resonant with what you're seeing and the kind of role you might want to play?
Yeah, I'm thinking about like, but what would need to be my posture? Like, how do I should act?
Yes.
And like, I don't have any resources. I just really would like to be a system transformation catalyst.
Yeah. The question about posture and mindset, it's so core because in the early days of our work, went from, being out in the field as a direct service provider to then this field catalyst role, which was much more kind of servant leadership, much more behind the scenes. And I remember there were moments where we actually intentionally made the choice to not brand and kind of have our name out front, because that then made it difficult to build trusting relationships between different groups of actors, because it was almost this competing brand amidst all of the work that was happening in the field. And so for me, one of the mindsets is really just being a humble learner. And as I said, being a kind of servant leader, really seeking input from a broader ecosystem of actors and figuring out, okay, well, what's the connection across our work, and how do we together hold a vision and an agenda for change in our system? And so I think that's core. And that's really hard for funders to understand. So your point about capital, I mean, that's what I wake up thinking about every day and go to sleep thinking about at night, how to actually unlock capital for this work. Because believe me, if I were still doing direct service, I had funders lined up to support that work some years. And that is not the case right now. And I think it feels inaccessible, and it feels really long-term, and it feels complex and hard. And it is those things, but after decades doing other more concrete work that didn't get to impact, we have to take on this more complex work. Does that scare you? Are you like, oh, maybe I won't take on this?
No.
Oh, I think that was a doorbell. I think I heard that Samira was coming in. If we can let her into the room. I heard Samira, as we were talking outside, that I kind of noticed you were eavesdropping and curious, but also like when we were talking outside, really skeptical by this whole concept of like field catalyst. It feels like weird and strange, and so I just wanted to invite you in and I don't know, maybe you'll learn something, or maybe you'll remain skeptical. But I felt like it would be better if you're in the room rather than, you know, ranting to me on the outside about how this is all kind of like, you know, out there weird stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. And now I was eavesdropping, and I'm not quite sure I'm convinced, because if it's about a mindset shift as an organization, can't I just adopt a collaborative mind shift and be a field catalyst as well? Why do I need organizations, entities who are field catalysts? Why can't I just do it myself? And then when we talk about systems change, what do we really mean by that? Because I feel like the word gets thrown around quite a bit, just like, the new buzzword.
Yeah, great questions. And maybe starting with system change, and Sandra, I want to hear like what you're observing too as you think about the role and what systems change means. I mean, in my own work, I was delivering really high quality programs that had, gold standard evidence of impact on students' lives. But I reached what I thought of as this impact ceiling, where what was another community I was able to serve when we're talking about the scale of 55 million children in the US, and I was serving very well 30,000 children and families. It's like my aspiration is actually to get to the 55 million. And for me, it was a learning journey to figure out what that systemic set of factors, systemic set of barriers look like. And so to me, systems change means, we have systems, public systems that are operated and funded through government entities, and broader systems, kind of lowercase s systems surrounding those public systems that are made up of structures and policies and norms and power dynamics. And as a provider of really great programming, I was hitting up against these systemic barriers, like the public's mindset about education and how we should be serving young people, like the role of teachers in the teaching profession, like accountability measures in our public systems and how funding flows inequitably in them. And so for me, like once I opened my eyes up to those systemic barriers, this field catalyst role and work became the obvious next step, because without addressing those barriers, that vision of 55 million isn't even realistic, doing the work that I was doing. But Sandra, I'd love to invite you in.
Oh, yeah. Somebody knocked the door.
Leah, you're really lucky because I think your colleague Liz, your colleague Liz has decided to come in and give you a hand. I know you've worked together for many years, and the two
Liz
of you
was
have
destined
a lot
for
of
this,
experience.
the best last name.
So Liz, give poor Leah a hand that's getting attacked by Sandra and Samira.
Yeah, thanks. I've been listening to this conversation as it's been circling around, just like you, Samira. So I think what Leah and I share in common is this deeper work of thinking about systems change, right? This idea that you know, at the programmatic level or at the community level where we're delivering programs and services, you have a kind of a set number of people that you can impact. But if you can change a policy or a practice at a cross-scale level, or you know, at the level of a state, a province, a country, that's where you're going to change the odds for so many people beyond just your own community, right? And I think that that's what I see as the power of this work, and what you were talking about, Leah, the aspiration. So the work we've done in Canada through the Tamarack Institute is really seeking to end poverty in Canada. And we do this with a network of communities across the country. They're really focused on ending poverty in their communities and trying to address some of the root causes of poverty and how it shows up in their communities. And then what we do is we engage them in conversations, help them learn together, and then also try to understand what are what are the barriers that they're facing that we might be able to help them navigate more effectively locally, but then also raise up to the larger system and the larger players within the system. So, you know, it's really interesting, right? It can be things like affordable childcare. So in Canada, for example, both the federal government and the provincial governments have agreed to $10 a day childcare for all peoples, right? So that might be something that you can't get at your local level, but you are able to achieve when you're able to move the levers at the national level. And that has huge impacts for families who are navigating income challenges or are outside of the workforce. It all of a sudden makes it much more affordable. So a great example of how systems can be shifted through collective action.
Should we answer the phone?
Oh, okay.
I think we're lucky enough to have Sally, who is you know, a good friend of a few of you I know, but is kind of interested in potentially funding some of this work, but wants to learn a lot more. And thanks, Sally, for actually calling in. We didn't expect you to join us through the phone today, so really happy to have you here. I know you had a lot of questions, Sally, about this work as well. So, and I think it'd actually be interesting for Sandra and Samira to jump in response to some of Sally's questions and share what you've been learning from listening.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, I had a free half hour and I've been told to get out into the community more, so I'm really excited to be here and to learn from you all. So I guess I just don't understand what you're even looking for funding for. Like, is it funding individuals? Because that I know is kind of problematic. Do you have a specific project? Like, I don't know if I can fund relationship building. Like, and how much does that cost? That like, I don't know. That's very confusing to me. You know, also like in thinking about, you know, I heard you say, Leah, that this work could take many years. You know, I have budget cycles that are like 1 to 2 years. So like, it's not like I can make a 10-year commitment to this. So how would you propose I would even do that as a funder? And, you know, and I heard that, you know, from Liz and others that it's really important to connect all this work. Like who else, how do you know who's working in this space? Like who all's doing this? How do you come together? I need all the answers before I can move forward.
You know, what are your priorities, Sally, as a funder? What are the things that really interest you and that really motivate the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation? That's where I would want to kind of start, because I think you do have questions, but I think we have synergies and opportunities here. But I'd love to hear from you first about what are some of the things, what are some of the passion points that you have as a foundation?
Sure, thank you. So we're, you know, I feel like I always talk about our foundation. I really want to hear more about what you all think. But and the other thing I just want to say, a pet peeve of mine, is when a potential grantee tries to just regurgitate what we tell them. So I don't want that to be the case here in our conversation as well. Like I want, you know, our relationship to be an authentic one that, you know, where you can get something from it and and we can learn from one another. But, we're really focused on dismantling racial equity and making sure that, the public health system, the healthcare system, primarily we fund in those spaces, the child care system, and across communities, that they're well resourced, that they're equitable policies, and that folks can live their healthiest lives and thrive in those spaces as well. But it's just hard to hear to figure out the link between what you all are talking about and how we can advance this, because I agree with you. I think my leadership would want to know that certain policies are being changed and that we can meet the outcomes that we care about. So I would need you to explain it in that kind of language in order for me to really get support for this.
Yeah. Leah, do you want to jump in here? Or, oh, sorry, Sandra, were you jumping in?
Yes, I have a question to Sally, because I'm new in this thing and what I'm listening, and not just for you, Sally, but I offer overall about what is this catalyst work. First, I'm looking back and also to the movement of social innovation labs when it was the revolution, and it was like, it sounds kind of the same, to be honest. It's just a new name. First question. And second question, I think, Sally, your questions that you're holding now that I want to be a new is also, what's the role of foundations? Like, what the role of a philanthropic entity or as a field of philanthropy do you think you should play? Because if it's just about what you want, and before you came, we were talking about mindsets, and the mindset was about more abundance and less scarcity. And so how would you, because the questions that you're bringing to really, how did you say you want to erase, to bring more equity or some racial equity? This is huge, so we need so how many foundations should you pull up together? Like, are you open to work with other 15 founders and bring them in, the ones that so that it's more collective? And so I don't know, like, I'm listening, I'm getting very confused with all these terminologies and all this thing, because actually what attracts me at the beginning of our conversation is to change our posture and to and from all of the field, and not just my project doesn't, but rather, like, what are we working for? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think our foundation in particular is interested in trying to move this work forward, but I think we have structures, policies, and systems in place at our foundation, right, and perspectives that have been there for 40, 50 years that, there's that, it's going to take some internal work, not only just in our leadership, but also in all those practices. Like, we tend to just give support to folks that do specific projects. If we're talking about relationship building and other things, you might need general operating support, which, is something that we're trying to do more of, but I think, other funders are starting to do that as well. I think as far as being open to working with other funders, absolutely. But it's, someone's got to do the work to bring those funders together, to figure out who's funding and what, and to figure out which field catalyst groups are working in alignment to accomplish something. And for my foundation in particular, it would have to be aligned towards those systems, those prioritized systems that we care about, like public health, healthcare, childcare, et cetera.
So I have a really simple way of describing field catalyst work, and it's 4 things, right? It's 4 things, and it's a bit of a circular thing. So what would happen is, Sally, you would say, we're really interested in health equity as a priority. So you're the system actor. So then you would come to Tamarack or to any field catalyst and you would say, hey, we're interested in this. What do you know about who's working in that field? So the catalyst then goes to their local actors and says, hey, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is really interested in health equity. Are you working on health equity issues? And how are you working on them? And would you like to explore this together? So the system calls for something, and then the field kind of comes together, and Tamarack plays the role of gathering people together who are working in the field, communities, cross-sector roundtables in communities. The people in the field, the roundtables in the communities, then start to work and advance health equity work in their own communities, really based on, you know, some principles and some things that are important to them at a local community level. And the Catalyst supports that. It helps them create knowledge. It helps them deal with evaluation. It provides training and support to them so that they're not reinventing the wheel over and over again, but they're actually working more synchronistically together. And the individual community outcomes are collated up to shared community outcomes or shared outcomes across the network. And what we also see is that communities will identify things that are working for them, but also some of the barriers that the system has put in front of them, right? So then we would go back to Sally and say, and then to other partners. So Sandra, you're talking about other funders in the field. It might be other government actors in the field. And we would say, hey, this health equity work has been working on the ground. Here's what that network of practitioners is learning, right? Here is the barriers that they're facing. Here are some suggestions for policy change and for ways that the system might respond more effectively so that we can get to impact, whatever that impact is. More people accessing healthcare in their communities, a decrease in chronic disease, whatever the health equity priorities are. So that's how the work happens. There are 4 distinct buckets of work, 2 that sit at the system level, the system calling, and then the system responding, and then 2 that sit at the community level, the community calling in the community, and then the community responding. And the field catalyst sits in the middle, and very much like Leah said, in support of all of this work, in servant leadership to all of this work. And so that's that kind of work that happens. Anyways, hopefully that's helpful.
I can hear everybody applauding. I think I can see all of you applauding too. Man, that was such a rich dialogue. We were so lucky to be able to have witnessed that. And we're going to now invite all of you. So thanks for typing into the chat. We will be synthesizing what you've typed shortly. And we will have a moment for sharing a bit of resources as well, so don't worry about that. But I want to give you all a chance to actually talk to each other. We believe strongly, as I think most of you know, in building relationships. I was just in a space where I said our motto is relationships everywhere all the time. And we want to just give you a chance to tell your stories to each other. So very simply, you're to have a few minutes. You're going to be put into random groups this time. Sometimes we let you choose, sometimes we do random. And you're going to tell a story of your own story of being a field catalyst, whatever it may be. You tell your story for 3 minutes, and then you listen to the other stories for 3 minutes. No other rules, probably no other space for dialogue. Make sure to take up your 3 minutes, but take up no more than 3 minutes. We'll give you a reminder to switch, and then we'll see you back here in a few minutes. There's a few people in this room that are not actually people, they're AI, fake people. So I'm gonna have to switch a few of you around in a moment. If anybody has, like, they're in the car, or they really can't participate, or they're really not in the mood to participate in the breakout, let us know. And we'll try and kind of keep you out of it. Just don't join your room. Okay, enjoy. And the speakers are going into the rooms as well to share their stories. So welcome back. We're going to do a moment. I'm going to do a countdown, and we're going to do a moment of physical embodiment of what we just experienced from each other. And what I want to invite you to do is to just think about a physical gesture, something that you feel like with your body can express the story that you just heard. Can be a gesture of gratitude. It can be a gesture of something that you heard in the story, but just I'm going to give you a few seconds just to think of a physical. Don't do it yet. I'll count down, and then we'll all do it at once. Okay, so we're going to do, and I'm going to do a screenshot here too. So we're going to do 5 and 0. We're all going to do the gesture and hold it. 4, 3, a gesture that represents the story, something that you took out of the story that you just heard. 2, 1. Okay, let's see your gestures. Your physical gestures. Hold it, hold it, hold it. So I can do a few. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. Okay, so much richness so far, but so much more to do. We're going to do a bit of introspective thinking and mapping, and I'm going to invite you in a moment to go to a Miro board. But before I do that, I just want to allow us a bit of thinking together. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is to just take 2 minutes. I'll put in some music in the background to think about, again, going back to what we wrote in the chat and what we listened to through the stories and what we listened through the role plays and what we even did in the crossword puzzle. What is it that field catalysts do? What is it that makes them so special? And what is their particular impact? So just take 2 minutes to reflect on that. You can write it down in your notebook. You can write it down on a Word document or whatever you want. So 2 minutes to reflect on what it is that they do, what makes them special, and what their impact is. I see some of you have already started typing in chat. Thank you for doing that. I'm shared. If you can't access the Miro board, don't worry about it. But I've shared a board because I'll give you an alternative way to engage. But I've shared the board in chat. And this is an invitation to continue to actually write down through sticky notes what you have started noting down yourself around what they do, what makes them so special, their impact. And I'll let us continue to work silently here. I'll share my screen in a moment. It looks like another number of people are already on and they're figuring this out. But just in case you're either confused or whether you haven't used Miro before, or if you have any tech issues, so just sign on to this link and tell what field tell us what do they do, why they're so special, what is their impact, and you can drag and drop some of these sticky notes. You can make your own sticky notes from over here. You can duplicate these sticky notes. That's the way to make sticky notes. It's pretty simple. If for whatever reason you can't just make this work, don't wait like 5 minutes for it to load. If you're on your phone, just type in chat and we'll pull this all together afterwards. So don't worry about obsessing about the technology. It's more important that you engage with us. So we're just taking a few more minutes to write down some answers around, and I'll keep the screen sharing as well for anybody who's not able to access, for you to follow along on what it is that field pilots do, what makes them special, and what their impact is. There's a lot of richness coming through. I'm going to do 2 more invitations. So one is an invitation to participants and others to the speakers. Somebody's kind of already started us with this here. But I'm going to invite us as to not just put words in, but also make this a bit into kind of like a co-creative poetic art form. So you're welcome to also add images, which you can copy and paste from Google. You can draw your own images. You're welcome to add poetry. You're welcome to add songs. You're welcome to add stories. So let's broaden our way of describing beyond just keywords to poetry, stories, and images and songs. And panelists, I'm going to invite you to take some time to really look through this board and observe as to what you'd like to pull out, because in a few moments we'll bring you back and allow you to do some reflections on what you're seeing here, and how in particular we can use some of what we're seeing here to make the case to get more funders to support your path. I'd love to open up a discussion where, and by the way, feel free when you speak just to quickly introduce, since we didn't do this in the role play, your name and the organization you represent. And I might invite you, Samira, to speak first, and you have a lot to say around this theme of philanthropy. But open up a discussion around really the question of, okay, yes, a lot of us are convinced that this is a special, unique, meaningful way of working, and yet the funding world is not, for the most part, except for a few special outliers. And how is it that we can really enable that shift to happen? As the panelists are talking back and forth and brainstorming some thoughts, I want to invite everyone else to listen with the lens of ideas for action. So what are things that we can actually do? That's something that we're really trying to work towards this year's festival, is making every session a launch pad for something else. What are things that we can actually do? This time, don't write them in the chat yet. We'll invite them all to come in the chat at once. But just reflect with the lens of what are some of the things that we could actionably, reasonably do that could help enable some of these shifts to happen. So again, panelists, you're reflecting on how can we make the shift happen. The audience is reflecting on concrete, realistic actions to move some of these ideas forward. Samira, to you.
Thanks, Brendan. And maybe I'll just start off with sharing a bit about WINGS, because that's the perspective I'm bringing to the table here. So for those of you who may not know, WINGS is a global network of philanthropy support and development organizations. So we are a network of networks, some that you might be familiar with. I was looking through where everyone's dialing in from. So Council on Foundations in the US, UPF, you've got Apelea, PEX, I saw someone mention that. We've got Community Foundations Canada, we've got Giving Tuesday and other networks that are part of us. And then we also have a group of what we call philanthropy support organizations. So putting another terminology there. But these are organizations, think tanks, research institutions, advisory organizations, giving movements, who we really see as a group of field catalysts, or what we call support organizations and the philanthropy ecosystem, all coming together behind a common mission, which is really how do we grow philanthropy? How do we strengthen the conditions for it so it can be more effective, more transformative, so we can address these root causes? And I think one of the cases to be made is the fact that, and I think this is something that Sanjay Purohit from Societal Thinking shared, we can't fight the multiplication of issues with the addition of solutions. And we really need to make the case that field catalysts, support organizations, field supporters, a new term I learned from Farah in our one-to-one, they play a key role in really creating that multiplier effect and creating a ripple effect on the scale and pace of change and action that's needed. They can serve that purpose. And I think one of the things that we need, and it's challenging for funders, is around really sharing stories. The infrastructure, the roots in a garden, for instance, the images that were coming up, sometimes you don't see them. So how do we generate stories? Because they can be compelling. It's a mix of quantitative and qualitative data. And we've had a lot of these examples that showed up at the pandemic. We had examples in Brazil where we had a social media agency come together with a support organization, with a funder, and they developed a campaign and they raised 8 million USD in 3 months. From small donations like 200 right through to corporate donations from TikTok. That is space and scale in the event of a crisis. And at the same time, during the pandemic, where you had this strong ecosystem, where it was visible and connected, you saw that they were able to advocate for support packages for the sector, for philanthropy and civil society. And you saw this in the US and the UK, for example, and there were other countries where you didn't see this, India being an example of this. So I think sharing stories along to make the case for why this is important becomes really key. I think as field catalysts, it's also, and the work that we're doing at Wings, we work with our members, and that's how we work with field catalysts, is we work with our members at a national, regional, and global level to do a few different things. And one of them is how do we influence ourselves as a sector and as a practice, as philanthropy, to be better, to do better. And for this, we really need to be thinking about how we need to change our norms and practices, our incentive structures. In the chat, there was a comment about, is it really transformation or systems change, or is it just incremental change? Who is the sector or the practice really accountable to? And I think, so for us, we've launched the Philanthropy Transformation Initiative, which is, again, a co-created global framework around what are the mindset shifts that we need to take as philanthropy, including funders, to make this shift in action. And it includes ideas such as being an enabler and being at the service of others, giving up control, and really creating spaces for collaboration to actually use all of your assets. It's not just about the grant making. It's about your endowments. It's about the culture. It's about the board. It's about the operations. How do you align that behind values to really create the change that we need to? And this is where things like trust-based philanthropy really come to the fore. And the last one is, whilst we're operating, and one of the things Farah mentioned was, that I took away was defining the field of focus for yourself. But there is an intersectional lens. If you're working on health systems, climate is going to impact your work. How are you taking an intersectional lens? And there's a lot of complexity around it. So being a translator and helping take the expert knowledge down to how you can operationalize this is also a role that field catalysts can play. So I think there is an opportunity to make that case and to make that kind of role very, very visible, that role of bridge builder, translator, seeing the bigger picture. And I think there is a coordinated effort from the sector to say, okay, how do you fund differently? There aren't many funders, as Brendan said, where they have a stream just for field catalysts. And then it can feel like you're in competition with others. So I think the last thing I'll say is, in investing in field catalysts, in what we call philanthropy ecosystems, you can also help unlock local resources for locally led development, both financial and non-financial, and actually look at how you grow the pie rather than competing for the same slice of the pie. And that's a role that can be played. And I think connecting it to agendas such as localization, locally led development can help make the case for funders. I'll pause there, Brendan, and give the space to others as well. But there's so much more that can be said about this.
Just gonna let the others jump in, talk to each other, interrupt each other, and have a conversation.
I would just jump in and say plus to everything that you said, Samira. The real challenge that we found at Tamarack is that it is difficult to find funding for the field catalyst work, and how Tamarack has funded that over the last 20 years is by growing a social enterprise arm of our work so that we can be in conversation with our communities despite funding shifts and changes, right? So that we believe that our work is authentic, and our authentic relationship with communities and the communities that have joined our work. And despite funding flows, ups and downs, we will still be there. And in fact, in the communities, the issues are there and they're present for them, right? So we can't leave communities behind. That's core to what our philosophy is as an organization. And so in order to support communities over the longer term, over 20, 25 years, we have to be entrepreneurial in some ways to facilitate the ups and downs of, priorities, because priorities shift and change, whether it's funders or government or other system actors. And yet in communities, the work is persistent, and hopefully we're making progress together. And so I do think it is such an important conversation that we're having today, and really value all of the input that all of you have as practitioners, as funders, as people that are concerned about scaling the impact of locally based or place-based or network-based initiatives, joining them together, because as Samira said, the issues are complex, right? And it does require the energy and the innovation of all of us to meet the increasing complexity that is being faced at the local level, and to support the really good work that is happening in communities.
Well, thank you for saying all that. I speak today from the BMW Foundation, but I would like more to speak as an observer of the philanthropic field in Europe and Latin America. I have also the feeling that from North America, there's a lot of language coming and trends, but it's completely not really reflecting the realities of the countries. So it's just like dropping down from other kind of societies and realities. I'm very positive, but also a little concerned about that we're not having the real hardcore conversations. And I think with the philanthropic field and funders, we are not talking about really the roles that we're taking in our own governance and the interdependency around it. Because like at the moment, I still see foundations that are appropriating all these languages, community, sense of belonging, and all this, but it's not really reflecting on the way they're acting or the entire governance structure, like not understanding what this will impact how you hire, you know, like questions very basic about like how you as your own internal organization and how you're going to build that. Like what kind of power does the donor have? Like what do they have to say where and what, and like how do they know? Like to be honest, like it's very rare. The boards are really not reflecting the entire work, and like also there is this work from the Guerrilla Foundation, and if you don't know it, I highly recommend it. I will post this on the chat, because there is a means of really inspirational new way of doing philanthropic and this work. Like the things that we get is like Mackenzie Foundation, and it's been criticized so bad about like what she's doing and this announcement, but it's not at least a try of like our own reflection of why do I have to take control? Like we need to lose that illusion of control, because that comes from this really, I want to continue the power that is being done. And in the rooms of philanthropy, it's a lot about the house and the mechanism and this new word. And I even put for our own work a piece of paper about starting from public-private philanthropic partnership, then multi-stakeholder dialogue, then social innovation labs, and now the new thing is the social impact catalyst. And nobody's really talking about the posture. That how does that mean? Like, I'm going to lose all the control of how money is going to be distributed? Like, I'm going to hire people different? I'm going to do my entire hierarchical, what's the role of the team, you know, the teams inside? So I am very excited about like really pushing more conversation about shifting our own house and behaviors, and because I think that a lot of the catalysts, and mostly in this and communities communities like in Latam or in Africa, they're doing this work. They are not even concerned about being called catalyst or not catalyst. They're innovating and working with each other and doing the thing. And I think we also need to re-educate these organizations and challenge their own understanding of their role. I don't know how, no?
Well, I was going to say, I would just say thank you for all of that. And I think two things I would elevate from what you just shared in particular. One, just that foundations have this, a word that has been used with me from a foundation director is authorizing environment that's created by the board, principal, donors, right? And so a lot of the conversations that we're observing on the part of philanthropy are amongst the philanthropoids, like the program officers, the director, like the staff of these foundations, and very senior folks, like, you know, like the leaders of these institutional foundations. But then there's still this kind of up leveling or managing upward, as these are words that have been used to me to describe what feels like a dilemma with boards and principals and donors. And it feels like the conversations aren't translating at that level. And that feels like a huge barrier and nut to crack. And I've started to think about the other thing I would uplift from what you just said, Sandra, is the field of philanthropy. Like maybe what we're actually talking about here is a systems change effort about philanthropy and the system that is philanthropy. And what would it take to actually do that? And I think there's several catalysts that, you know, could even come together as like a catalyst of catalysts around that, just to get super meta. Sally, I also saw you come off mute. Really curious your thoughts.
Thanks. Yeah, I love what you just said. I was in a meeting recently with some community folks, and they referred to philanthropy as a grant plantation. And that wording really struck with me, because they were like, yeah, people come to you, they beg for money, you dole out the jobs, you dole out how much each one gets. And that, I mean, it's very upsetting. I've been in philanthropy for almost 30 years. And especially, you know, I know my privilege being a white woman and being in an environment that has done this for so long. And you know, we're trying to do things differently. We've made this commitment to racial, increasing or advancing racial equity, and we now finally have a group that's really focused on our equity and culture within the organization. We have an equity leadership group that, you know, staff sit on to really hold ourselves accountable to make sure that decisions are transparent. They look at hiring practices. You know, we've diversified our funding a ton. Our staff hiring a ton. And I think, you know, we're looking at a lot of different internal practices and culture. We're looking at all of the way we do our grant making, and then each individual like priority and program areas, also looking at the way they do their work and really thinking about more equitable grant making practices and trust-based philanthropy. And, you know, it takes a long time to sort of change and move a big ship, but we're really committed to it and trying. And to get to your point about board diversity, we brought on Edgar Villanueva, who wrote about decolonizing wealth, right? That basically says foundations shouldn't even be in existence. So I'm really excited that we have folks like that who are really pushing our board. And not only are we as staff getting training and really starting to think about ourselves, our own biases, our own way of doing things, but we're also pushing our board to do the same thing and to look introspectively and to do that too. Something I just a couple of things I wanted to lift up from the Mura board is folks talked about impact, right? And, you know, sort of funding new approaches versus maintaining the status quo, and it all coming down to who's at the table and determining that. And, you know, I think as funders, we tend to go back to the people we know who we trust and who we can go back to time and time again. And I think that point is really important, to make sure that there are new voices at the table, right? That you're not just going to the same old. So that's something that I think as funders, we need to commit to. I mean, we're not going to get different results, right, if we keep doing the same thing. So I think that's something I wanted to lift up. You know, the learning together and the field development, of course, is super important, and connecting and sustaining relationships and leading toward, you know, having that lead to systems change and so forth. But the one thing I didn't see in there was about the power sharing, right? So I work on our leadership for better health area, and we're trying to bring folks together, teams of people together who represent different perspectives and who not only build those relationships and come to a system, you know, with those different perspectives, but also learn from one another, but then figure out ways to share power as they create those new policies and solutions. So that's just something that we're testing on. And then the last post that I wanted to lift up too is that the need for sense makers. And I feel like as a funder, I can do that. Like, I don't need to just fund somebody to do research and just like promote that and have that be the end all be all, right? Like, we really need to have the folks come to the table and make sense of what we're learning, and to frankly test it to see if that's reality. And I think the more that we can build those folks into our processes from the beginning and not do this work, you know, sort of to do the work more inclusively than, you know, to do it as an afterthought. So that's something that I feel like I'm taking back, and I'm already committed to it, but I feel like other folks need to do that as well. So thank you.
I want to there's so much depth and richness and bravery in all of what you shared, and I really want to appreciate that. I do want to give David a chance to speak for 60 seconds. He's a big engage. I know there's a number of you who would like to raise your hands and speak, but time is ticking. But David's been messaging me and has, I think, a nice story to share. In the meantime, I also want to invite everybody in the chat. I put the prompt in to think about very specific, reasonable, collective things that we could do together, that you could contribute to, that we can do as a community, that you can do from your own community, that could help us take, I think a lot of these shifts that we talk about are very big. They take 10, 20, 30 years, and they're really important, but we also need to find the stepping stones. And so I'm gonna just invite a bit of conversation in chat, invite David for you to share, and invite the panelists for you to actually look at what's emerging through chat and see if anything is really standing out to you. Go ahead, David.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it. My name's David Lubell, and I'm with an organization, contracting with an organization called Unbound Philanthropy. But I come from an organization previously, I'm a serial entrepreneur, social entrepreneur called Welcoming America. And a lot of the work of Welcoming America was making communities more welcoming to immigrants, but a lot of it was just changing the sector, the way immigrant integration, immigrant inclusion work was done. And so telling stories, to points that have been made, collecting data, but also telling stories is really important. So just want to say, on the changing philanthropy side, I'm working on climate migration with Unbound, and I'm trying to find ways to, the funder is behind this idea of bringing the sector together and doing a sort of ecosystem-wide strategy. And I want to help them do it right. And I also want to work with others that want to create these stories of, where it actually works, where you bring the sector together, they change the way they work, and they have much more impact. You collect the data. So, I want to do it well. So if anyone else is interested in that, I'd love to connect with you. But I think that, yeah, stories as part of a larger strategy to change the sector can be really impactful.
That was a great segue, David. So I'm going to leave maybe a minute of silence for us to interact in chat. And as you were writing, I was also writing, and I see other people writing around stories, which I think is a small, achievable, easy but achievable thing. And put on some music, leave a minute for other ideas to come through. Again, stepping stones, achievable, not where we need to go, but what we can do now. And also, panelists, just take a look at what you're seeing and what you feel is you want to really highlight, and we'll come back, and then we'll do a bit of celebratory closing to close the space. And if you don't know what to write, feel free to read others, react. Maybe you'll get ideas, or maybe you don't have ideas, so just reply, interact. So panelists, just feel free to unmute and share what's emerging for you. I'm gonna leave the music on, but at any point, whenever you see something that you're like, yeah, I really align with this, or this feels really achievable.
Well, I love the idea of a communications campaign and some visually appealing. I actually think we have tons of stories of impact of these organizations, but we have a ton of different audiences that we need to translate those for, from high net worth donors and boards to foundation staff to others in the ecosystem. And so I myself, in my own role in researching field catalysts, have felt stuck at times of I think we've tried to translate for all. And I just love the idea of visually appealing. So are there 2-minute videos? Are there, more podcasty, are there other modes that we think would reach, in particular, donor audiences? Because we've gotten the feedback, they're not going to read another 40-page report. And they're actually just tired of links being sent. And so we've got to figure out other media to translate better and more pithier and really complex.
Yeah, what else? Sandra, Sally, Liz had to hop off, but Samira. Oh, Liz, you're still here.
Yeah, I'm talking, sorry. In the UK, they've mapped how funders are funding across different communities that have been identified as the first step, right? And now what they're weaving in is also what is happening in communities from a Field Catalyst perspective. So it's kind of like this emerging interactive map to see where many funders are in the same place, but sometimes competing against each other, or sometimes aligning their work to have even greater impact. And so I think things like visualizing that opportunity is a really great way of starting or seeding a conversation. And Lee, it's a little bit different than a story, right? It's oh, I didn't realize we were both there. Oh, how do we align more intentionally? So I think there's some real innovation that is happening in multiple places, as you've seen at Bridgespan, and as we kind of track this as well at Tamarack.
Thanks, Liz. I want to let everybody just say one, Samira and Sally and Sandra say one last word, but also to those in the chat, somebody just did it. Thank you. Interact with a plus. If you see an idea where you're like, yeah, I really want to engage with this. We're gonna track this and maybe follow up with you, or follow up with each other. Obviously, go ahead, Samir.
Yeah, just responding. I think I see a lot of need for storytelling and stories, and I know that there are campaigns across the board. And as part of the transformation initiative, we're co-creating and co-building, so to speak. We have 15 stories of how foundations and funders are transforming. And then there was a recent collaboration between Alliance Magazine, Propel, Philanthropy, and Wings to share 10 stories of how social impact infrastructure organizations are looking at their work. And one of the asks at the end of that report was really, we could do so much more if we had the right resourcing. And I think just so how we can get more of these stories would be great. We would love to feature them. I think it's something very tangible. We have a funders working group at Wings, which really brings together funders who are looking and thinking about supporting or actively investing in infrastructure and ecosystems. One of the things that we're thinking of doing is how do we cross-pollinate, because there are different donor collaboratives focused on different aspects. It would be great to understand how we can bring them together for some cross-pollination of ideas, if that resonates with anyone.
Sally.
Yeah, I'm just taking this all in. I just feel so grateful to be amongst this group and to really connect with a lot of folks, particularly on the global side as well, because we don't really do a lot of global funding, but we do fund do some funding to bring global ideas back to the US. So just happy to be part of this community and to hear all the folks that people are lifting up. And on our Leadership for Better Health area, we are trying to figure out how best to support infrastructure. So I love that you all are thinking about that and thinking about different convening spaces as well. And I had another thought, but it left me. So I'll think about it and put it in the chat if I remember. Thank you.
Sandra, last words.
A lot of gratitude, but also the will to dare, to dare to bring up the difficult questions. And so that will be what I take. And yeah, thank you for being here and spending your time with us. And thank you, Tito.
So I want to end on a totally silly note. Some of you saw I had my little boy in my hand a few minutes ago. And this is a song we listen to all the time, which to me reflects so much of what we're talking about. I shared the link in chat. Just the more we get together, the happier we'll be. Feel free to dance a little bit, take a moment to move and dance in celebration of all of the bravery of pretty much everybody who's here, because this is not hard work, this is tiring. And I hope today, at least, just taking a moment of hope, that can moving forward. And before you go, please unmute and say goodbye and thank you in any language of your choice. That's how we're going to sign off today.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias. Chao.
Together, together, together.
unmute and talk, huh? Who wouldn't even count. Yes, I say goodbye to everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.